How's it going, everybody? Jeff Slakey here, continuing my candidate conversations. And I'm sitting down now with Dave Stevens, who's running for Mason County Superior Court Judge. How you doing?
I'm doing real great.
Tell me about yourself.
Let's see. After high school, I joined the United States Navy. Did 6 years, then I went to University of Washington, got my bachelor's degree. But the most important thing I did as an undergraduate is I met my wife. We're working about 30 years of marriage.
Wow.
And then I went into law enforcement for a little while for the federal government. And then I went to law school, the University of Washington. And after I graduated, I became a prosecutor. Did that for a number of years. And then we had an election in Spokane County. I was not on the winning side, so the guy who got elected let me go. And then I went and became a federal prosecutor for a while. But sequestration kicked in, and a lot of people don't remember that, but Congress couldn't come up with a budget, so they said if they couldn't come up with a budget, it would do automatic kick-ins where they would reduce the budgets of agencies. So I was working at the U.S. Attorney's Office, and they said, Dave, we love you. You're one of the best trial attorneys we've had, but your job no longer exists. So then I went to Afghanistan, worked there for a while. My job there was to train judges, prosecutors, law enforcement, if we could find one, defense attorneys. Did that for a while. Then I went and became an international prosecutor in Kosovo. That's near Albania, Serbia. And a lot of people may remember when Bill Clinton, we went in there, because the Serbs were bombing them, and basically set up that country. And so I did some prosecutions there. And I got an offer to be chief public defender for the Colville Federated Tribes. So I did that. I did some private practice cases as defense attorney. And then I put in an application for Mason County, and I got a call. And so they made me an offer. And I told my wife, I said, how would you like it if I made $40,000 less, worked a lot harder, and was grumpy all the time? And she says, that's not sounding good. And I said, but we would be in Mason County. And so my daughter, and we now have 5 grandkids. It was 3 when we first got here. And so she said, oh yeah, take that. So I've been in Mason County since then.
Wow. Huh.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a great story.
Yeah.
Tell me about the position you're running for.
Well, a Superior Court judge does a lot of things. What they're most known for, what hits the paper and the news most of the time, is the criminal cases. Because in our system, criminal cases, because people's liberty is restrained, have priority over almost all other cases. There's other things, ITA cases, Involuntary Treatment Act, and stuff like that. They also have priorities too. So, so I think one of the most significant things they do is the criminal cases, because community safeties, that's something that's at risk a lot of times in these cases. Also, victim safety, holding people accountable. So that's what Superior Court does. And, they do dissolutions, divorces, civil cases, things like that.
What is your understanding of the backlog, the current backlog, and what your docket would look like?
Well, we're not as bad as some counties because COVID basically shut down the court system for a couple of years. So a lot of cases got really backed up. And if you did a trial, you had to have a very large space, keep all the jurors, the requisite distance apart and things like that. So a lot of counties got behind. We're not as bad as most. There's always a backlog. I've seen very, very, very few court systems where they don't have some kind of backlog. We have one. I think that it can be addressed. What it takes is a judge that's willing to hold the attorneys accountable. So when they have hearings, that actually things get done. And that really isn't happening a lot because the attorneys will always have some reason. I've got another case set for trial. I've got a vacation or something like that. So if the judge doesn't say, listen, you guys need to get this hearing done. Sometimes there's other hearings you got to do. So if there was the defendant made statements, you might have to do what's called a 3.5 hearing, a confession hearing, to see whether or not those statements are admissible. and getting those things scheduled and done, the judges can hold somebody feet to the fire. I actually have done the most trials since I've been here, and that's not an indictment against the other prosecutors. We have a couple other felony prosecutors, and they are taking cases to trial. But I'm known for having my cases prepared and ready to go to trial. So I think that's the important thing, is having attorneys that will get the job done. Because a lot of defendants, especially if they're out of custody, they don't have a real incentive for that case to go to trial.
Tell me a little bit about how you would handle courtroom management.
Well, I mean, I have met judges that all they have to do is raise their eyebrow, and people will stop any shenanigans that are going on. I think our bench, Monty Cobb, Dan Goodell, Superior Court judges, they control their courtroom really well. I've had to be in charge of courtrooms, so it is something I have experience with. I have managed people, and so that's what you got to do. You got to have I don't know if I'd call it moral authority, but they have to respect you. So if you walk into a judge's courtroom where they don't have any control, both the prosecutors and the defense will basically take over the courtroom and run it. And so you don't want that. You want to be in control of your courtroom.
How do you present yourself in front of judges?
Well, I have a military background. Right after high school, I did 6 years in the Navy, and you respect the rank even if you don't respect the person. So I am always respectful. I think most judges are very happy to see me in their courtroom because I know what I'm doing and I'm prepared.
What are some of the other things you've seen in the way the county overall handles court cases that you could have the ability to change or to change if you have that chance?
So, like I said, the attorneys will run your courtroom and run the cases, but the judge is the final arbitrator of what's going on. And so I think the most important thing is for the judges to hold the attorneys feet to the fire. Law enforcement works really hard. They generally present us with really good cases. Things come up because a lot of times we don't get the defendant's side of the story. We don't get their witnesses till right before the trial and stuff like that. But law enforcement's doing their job. They're doing it well. I'm the only candidate that's been endorsed by law enforcement, the Fraternal Order of Police, which is the largest umbrella group for law enforcement officers in Mason County. And they actually go into other counties, have endorsed me because they know that I'll get the job done and that the cases will move along.
One thing about talking with judge candidates is that it's difficult to ask about what ifs, and if you were in this situation, how would you adjudicate on this? Can you explain to the viewers and the listeners why that is important, and if I'm correct in that?
No, you are correct in that. So you don't want a judge who's prejudged the case. They got to hear the evidence. They got to hear the argument. So if you go in there and you say, I will do A, B, or C, and you've pre-decided the case. And so you're not acting as a judge then. So, I think Justice John Roberts said it best. And there's, a lot of truth to it. It's not a perfect analogy, but judges are like umpires. And so, they call the balls and the strikes, whether motions are granted or denied, stuff like that. So I think that's the idea behind it, is you don't want to have somebody pre-decide the case. Like if one of the big things in this election was pretrial release. So there have been some cases. Nicholas McClure, he was being held on a burglary, extensive criminal history, extensive warrant history, and then the judge let him out over the state's objection with a whole bunch of unenforceable conditions. So you only want to put a condition on somebody that can actually be enforced. So if I tell you, don't drink, and there's no mechanism to enforce that, like you don't have them wear an ankle bracelet, with an alcohol detector on it, stuff like that, then you really haven't done much. So he gets out, and then he goes around town and starts lighting fires. So he lit a fire in the dumpster at Safeway. He lit a fire at Nifty Thrifty that almost burned the place down. Thank God somebody noticed it when they were responding to the fire at Safeway. The Shiloh at the inn there, he let, and people could have died. I mean, that whole motel could have gone up. And he should have never been out. So, and then of course the case everybody thinks about is Chantel Peterson. So the trick is when you have somebody and you're putting release conditions on them, the thing you look at broadly is whether or not they're a flight risk. So have they had criminal cases in the past where they didn't appear? And there are people with 30 bench warrants. That means 30 times they didn't appear, and the court had to send out a warrant to get them. You look at that, decide whether or not they're a flight risk. You decide whether or not, if it's like an assault case, whether there's a danger to the victim. You look at, the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. So if they've got convictions, prior convictions for assaults, then your radar is up, and you're thinking, this person has a problem with violence. And then you look at the nature of the charge itself. What danger is the actual victim in? If it's a drive-by shooting, the county is at risk because you don't know where bullets are going to go sometimes, especially if you're spraying them out the window of a vehicle. So you look at all those things, and then you also look at the defendant's rights, because everybody's presumed innocent. Okay, so you have to find probable cause that a crime has been committed or will be committed. So inchoate crimes, attempts and stuff like that. And then you look at all that, and then you decide. I think I've seen a change over the decades that I've been doing this. And I think that they're getting away from protecting the community and the victims. I think that people who are flight risks, and the problem with the flight risk is that the cases just drag on forever. I've had cases, I've been here, going on 3 years now, and I've got cases where every third hearing the guy doesn't show up. So when he does show up, then he gets a new court date, and it just drags on. Nothing's getting accomplished. So you look at all those procedures. You got to know all the case law and everything like that, and then you decide, what do we need to do to make sure that this case gets done in a timely manner? And so that's one of my key interests.
When you're looking at sentencing and sentencing guidelines, what are your thoughts on alternative sentencing through drug courts or drug rehabilitation, and whether or not it's more important to have mandatory sentences versus the idea that maybe you could get a range of sentences in the future?
So back in the late 70s, early 80s, there was a hue and cry for sentencing guidelines. So what it was is, if you committed a burglary, say in Eastern Washington, a residential burglary, you could potentially be looking at a lot of time. But if you did it on, let's say, King County or something like that, maybe you wouldn't look at as much time. Because in larger jurisdictions, sometimes they get inured to those kind of crimes. I mean, anybody who's had their home broken into knows the sense of violation. Somebody's been going through your things. Somebody you don't know has been in your home. But if you see a lot of that, you kind of get inured to what it does to the victim. So we went to a system where they rank offenses. So murder, rape, those are right at the top, and they carry the most time. And then you have the person's criminal history, how many prior felonies or scorable misdemeanors. So like for domestic violence cases, the misdemeanors can count for felony points. And then you get a range. Now, the center of the range is the presumptive sentence. So say it's like a level 1 offense, and you're looking at 22 to 29 months. The middle would be 25.5. So that's where you start. And then you look at mitigating factors. has the person changed their act? Yeah, maybe they committed this crime, but it's been a long time since they've committed a crime, so you take that into consideration. Or, the crime, they've had recent crimes, and so you go more towards the top end, the 29, and then you decide. So that's why we went to that system, because we wanted to be fair to everyone. We didn't want it where if you were in one judge's courtroom, you get, he's a hanging judge, so you get, if the range was 0 to 10 years, you might get 10 years. And then you got another type of judge that would give them, credit for time served, something like that. So we wanted to make it more fair. Then after a while, the legislature started deciding, well, we want people to get treatment. So we came up with things like DOSA, Drug Offender Sentencing Alternative. And when it first came out, it was prison-based. So you'd get a sentence and say it was the 22 to 29 with the 25.5 middle. Then you would do, 12.75 in prison, and then 12.75 in community custody, making sure you got treatment. And if you didn't follow through on your treatment, you didn't stay out of trouble, you'd be sent back to prison. And then they went to it wasn't too long ago, but I'm older, so too long ago to me could be like 5 or 7 years. But several years ago, they went to a residential-based DOSA. We don't get a lot of that because they have to qualify. They have to show us, they have a place to live, and they've got treatment set up and stuff like that. I'm a big proponent, and I many times will recommend sentencing alternatives because somebody really wants to change. I mean, that's what we really want in the long run. Whatever the offending behavior is, we need it to stop. So what do we have to do to make it stop? And if a sentencing alternative is the way to get there, where the community is safe, if there's a victim, the victim is safe, the defendant is getting treatment, whatever it is. If it's mental health treatment, we have a mental health sentencing alternative. If we can address that underlying behavior that way, it's best for everybody. It's cheaper in the long run. It reintegrates that person back into society. It gets rid of the offending behavior. I've actually had defendants that have come up to me years later. I remember this one man, and so we went to trial. He got convicted, and then he had to go through drug treatment. And so a couple of years later, I'm in line to go into the courthouse, and I see him, and I said, "What the heck are you doing here? Did you get in trouble again?" And he shook my hand. He said, "Mr. Stevens, you're the best thing that ever happened to me. I had all those other cases. I always got deals. I never followed through. Nobody held me accountable, but you took me to trial. I was held accountable. I went through the treatment. I've been clean. I think it was like 3 years." And his grin got even bigger. And he said, "I'm here to get a marriage license."
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And he invited me to his wedding. And it was actually at the courthouse. And so I went, and it was like being his best man. I got to be a witness at his wedding. So, we don't see a lot of that. One of the things that can really be tough, both on defense attorneys, judges, and prosecutors, is we see the same people again and again. Those are the failures. Failures on their part, failures of the system, and we don't see enough of our successes. So when we have the drug court, we've got veterans court, and in those kind of cases, you actually get to see the successes and stuff like that. And I really wish it's hard to focus on that, because day in, day out, I see police reports, and I charge up cases, and I prosecute cases. And even though I've only been here about 3 years now, I'm prosecuting people I prosecuted right at the beginning and stuff like that. So it's nice to have these alternatives and to see the people that, some of them, it's a long, hard road, but the ones that do complete it, they're our community is better for it. They're better for it. Victims are safer. So I really like the alternatives.
You have a campaign website?
We're on Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah. So Dave Stevens, number 4, and then Judge.
Okay.
So doing a regular website, we looked at it. There were these groups that would charge us a lot of money to do it, but a lot of people are on Facebook, or they can go onto Facebook and stuff like that. And we would rather put our money into things where we actually get out and meet people. We do a lot of doorbelling. We do a lot of events and stuff like that. And for me, that's the best part of the campaign, especially the doorbelling, because then you get out there and you really get to talk to the people. It's hard. You got to walk, and sometimes, especially during the summer, it's hot and stuff like that. And every now and then you're going to run into somebody who is, either has had a really bad day, or they had a bad experience or something like that. And that can be tough, but I really enjoy that. And that's where we're putting our effort.
Dave Stevens is running for Mason County Superior Court Judge. I'll put the link to that Facebook page in the show notes here in another candidate conversation here. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Real pleasure.
Yeah.